Hey guys, we're back with Marvel's What If Season 2, a series that takes a look at branch timelines in the MCU continuity, with the cosmic being Uatu the Watcher explaining the deviation in the continuity that led to these alternate universes. Now, I'm going to be doubling up on most of these episodes because an episode comes out every day up until the 30th, and on top of wanting to make other videos during the week, I'm not going to be making any on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. So today we're reviewing episodes 1 and 2. Now, episode 1 is called What If Nebula Joined the Nova Corps? The Nova Corps is the galactic law enforcement organization based off the planet Xandar, led by Nova Prime, which first appeared in Guardians of the Galaxy. The premise of this branch timeline is that Ronan the Accuser betrayed and killed Thanos and Gamora, leaving Nebula stranded in space. She was then recruited into the Nova Corps and has been working on the planet Xandar for a number of years. The crux of this modern day story is that Ronan launches an invasion of Xandar as he's had a grudge against Xandar and the Nova Corps for decades. But Nova Prime sets up a planetary shield that's meant to stay closed for 50 years. Skip ahead to the present, and Nebula is investigating the death of Yondu when she discovers a map to the planet's mainframe core. She's directed to investigate by Nova Prime, enlisting the aid of the criminal Jan Rog from Captain Marvel, as well as help from Howard the Duck. However, she ends up being betrayed, and it turns out that Nova Prime is actually planning to open the shield and allow Ronan to invade, with the promise that she will remain in charge of the planet after it's been subjugated by the Kree Empire. With this betrayal, Nebula decides to form her own group, which you might call an alternate Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's made up of herself using Yondu's fin and arrow, Howard the Duck, Korg, Meek, and Groot. While her team succeeds and they defeat Nova Prime, they end up shutting the shield again. Now, while that does prevent Ronan's invasion, there was kind of a good reason to get rid of the shield, which was that chaos had been erupting on Xandar for some time due to the collective feeling of isolation among the community. And so at the end of the episode, they finally open the shield for good. Now, the premise of the deviation for this story is unbelievable, and by that I mean I just don't believe it. The idea that Ronan could defeat Thanos in any universe is ridiculous. And I'm talking about base level Ronan using the universal weapon and base level Thanos, because as far as we're told, neither of them have Infinity Stones. Also, a number of the cameos don't make a whole lot of sense because they're simply not explained. Like, how did Korg and Meek escape Sakaar and make it to Xandar? How did Drax escape the kiln? Why isn't Rocket Raccoon with Groot? And where's Peter Quill? And if you think I'm just nitpicking, I'd advise you to go back and watch season 1, because the writers were fairly meticulous when it came to explaining the deviations in continuity, and those changes were explained to the audience by Uatu, as I mentioned earlier. Overall, I didn't find the story of episode 1 to be that interesting. To me, Nebula has never been a main character, and her tough guy act has always been treated like a joke in the Guardians of the Galaxy films. So, with that sincerity turned up to 11, it makes this episode seem more like a parody of the noir detective genre than an actual detective thriller. I think a more interesting alternative could have been if Steve Rogers had joined the Nova Corps. It could have been an alternate take on Captain America and the Winter Soldier, where instead of Steve investigating a corrupt shield, he can investigate a corrupt Nova Corps. It would also function as a fish out of water story, with Steve bringing his Earth-based sense of justice out into the greater universe. On another note, I'm still disappointed that the MCU has yet to expand on the Nova Corps and their abilities, because in the MCU, they're basically just cops with shiny vests, whereas in the comics, the Nova Corps is basically Marvel's version of the Green Lantern Corps, where they have enhanced strength, flight, and energy projection abilities. Though unlike the Green Lantern Corps, where each Corpsman's ability is based on their individual willpower, the Nova Corpsmen have different tiers, with each tier giving a Corpsman more access to the Nova Force, the source of which is called the Xandarian World Mind, similar to the Green Lantern battery on Oa. Overall, not a very strong start for Season 2 of What If, and I'm honestly surprised they went with an episode featuring Nebula of all characters. But luckily, the writers come back swinging with Episode 2. What if Peter Quill attacked Earth's mightiest heroes? Now in this universe, Yondu sold Peter Quill to Ego instead of keeping him and raising him himself. Ego trains Peter to help him with his universal expansion project, and sends Peter to Earth in Ego's ship, where he starts attacking the planet. In response to these events, Howard Stark and Peggy Carter decide to form a special group, which is made up of Hank Pym, Bill Foster, T'Chaka, the Winter Soldier, Wendy Lawson, aka Mar-Vell, and eventually Thor, who joins the group after the expansion had devastated all of the 9 realms outside of Earth. Now, the team does manage to subdue Peter, and he ends up regaining some of his humanity after he bonds with Hope Van Dyne, due to the fact that they both recently lost their mothers and that she gives him her Walkman. Now, the playlist on her Walkman is called Tracks to Astonish, which you can actually find on Spotify, and the name is a reference to the Tales to Astonish comic book series. In the end, Peter teams up with the 80's Avengers to defeat his father, although it's only his corporeal form. This leads the team to decide to stay together and plan to take the fight to Ego's homeworld, which, as we know from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, is simply a physical mass that holds his brain. This is hands down my favorite episode so far, and that includes Season 1's episodes. Seeing a previous generation of heroes come together, made up of people that you would never think would interact with each other, was really cool. It was also cool to see Ant-Man get to act as a pseudo-Avenger in his prime, because I never understood why they decided to age up Hank and Jan, rather than have them be the contemporaries to the Avengers. The episode also confirms for the first time through dialogue between Howard and T'Chaka that T'Chaka's father did supply the Americans with the vibranium to make Cap's shield during the war, which is cool. My only major complaint about this team is that they fall victim to the same incessant quipping that's become a staple of MCU dialogue. Also, there are some other eligible characters that I would have liked to have seen, such as the Red Guardian, Thunderbolt Ross, the Ancient One, and Nick Fury, just to name a few. Even though it would have to be an animation, I would love to see this story continue in some format, because it just opens up so many possibilities. Like with Bucky starting to reform now in the late 80's, he'd likely be there to support Steve when he's thawed out of the ice and act as an anchor as Steve adjusts to the modern world. Also, if Bucky doesn't kill Howard and Maria, then that gives Tony and Howard time to reconcile. Now maybe Tony doesn't become Iron Man, or perhaps after seeing this team fight together, Howard starts building an Iron Man suit, but realizing he's too old, leaves the rest of the job up to Tony, who, inspired by stories of the 80's Avengers, decides to use his genius to help the world. Perhaps after seeing the value of cooperation with other countries, T'Chaka will open up the borders of Wakanda and Killmonger won't become a villain. Maybe because Peter Quill is adopted by Hank Pym, he becomes the next Ant-Man instead of Scott Lang. Perhaps Mar-Vell decides to take on a more active hero role similar to that of her comic book counterpart. There's a lot of material to work with there. But even if they don't continue this universe, it was a great episode. It should have been episode 1. Let me know what you guys thought about episodes 1 and 2 of What If in the comment section below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like and subscribe button, as well as the notification bell so that you never miss out on a new video. And as I likely won't release another video in the next couple of days, I want to say that I hope you all get to spend time with your friends and loved ones this weekend and have a wonderful Christmas. Thanks for watching.